And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
Business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Don Gosher.
how well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at preneurmarketing.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's show with me, Dom Goucher, and him, Pete Williams.
Hey, buddy, how's things?
Hey, pretty good, pretty good.
Awesome.
Folks, this week we are going to be talking about opt-ins. This is one of those 7 levers topics that we talk about. So we're going to be talking about what opt-ins are, why they're important, and how you can get more of them. Before we go into that topic as the main body of the show, though, let's have a bit of a catch-up. Pete, there's been a lot of stuff happening on PreneurMarketing.com again.
Yeah, we're, as we sort of, I guess, have hinted and spoken about on previous episodes, we are really trying to ramp up the content publication processes and systems and things on the blog, and it's going really, really well. Had another round of awesome essays and articles and stuff go up, which is really cool. So published one earlier this week called basically it's about how I plan to give Eli $1 million. And it's just a really simple process and system that anyone can put in place, no matter how wealthy you are or not, to sort of teach your children some wealth foundations, which is obviously a series that's been happening on the blog as well. And the goal is to give them $1 million. And I won't sort of break down the process, but it's literally just a little bit of change every month into a system that over time will teach them about compound interest, teach them about growth, teach them about investing, and obviously at the end of the day, give them $1 million, which is really cool, and it's a very simple process. So I really encourage everyone who's got children or grandchildren or nephews and nieces who want to, teach them about money, teach them about wealth, and give them those wealth foundations that are so important. Check it out, because it's what I'm doing, and love to hear everyone's feedback on that.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea, actually. I like the angle, but also you have a background in this stuff. And I was really pleased when you did start doing the Wealth Foundations material, because one of the things we did together very, very, very long time ago was a piece that predates all of that, but was, your perspective on this stuff, because you have a lot of opinions about how entrepreneurs are great at making the money, but not at keeping the money, right? Exactly.
That's the whole idea of the Wealth Foundation series. Is it's just a series of essays that, allow me to sort of get on my soapbox and rant a little bit, as we tend to like to do. But it's just about that, because I think I've experienced that, and I think so many other people have experienced that too. That they're starting a business fundamentally because they want to pay off their credit card or make a little bit of money and go on a holiday or something like that. And, there's underlying issues there. If you're starting a business to pay off a credit card debt, what caused you to get in that debt? Because so many people I see from consulting calls and at conferences and things like that is that, if they don't have those correct and solid wealth foundations, once their business starts to make money, they just spend it. And they just end up still having that same credit card debt. It's just now an info course as opposed to, weekends away and random, pieces of junk. So it is really important to get those foundations right for your wealth. So when you do actually start making it in a successful business, which is obviously the core of what we talk about here, you actually can keep that money for your future, and you have that retirement, that you get those financial goals and dreams that you actually are achieving. But you need to have those foundations in place first, and that's what that whole series is about. And this one's a little bit of a sideways step, because it's about sort of ingraining your children early with these wealth foundations. So it's a little bit different to the majority of the articles that are in the series, but it's just as important.
Yeah, it's just another way into the same material, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Everybody needs to have their own reasons to start and learn things, and I just think it's another good perspective on it, really. Cool. Anything else in your? Well, obviously, we'll be linking to this in the show notes. By the way, folks, don't scroll away yet trying to find this stuff. But anything else on there in the last?
Yeah, well, actually, something very interesting that's happening at the moment is obviously, as I think a lot of people realise, particularly those who listen to the podcast, that we get opportunities to read and consume a lot of books from various publishers that send us galley versions and pre-release versions of books and all that sort of stuff, wanting us to either get the author on the podcast or promote the book to our audience some way. So we're going to start producing more book reviews, or not book reviews, I'd say book excerpts, in that we'll be going through a lot of the books that we get sent and trying to find a relevant chapter or a section that is, something that's swipe and deployable, that's evidence-based, that's data-driven, that can really give us and the community here a good takeaway and a good sample of the book if they want to go and obviously dig a lot deeper, which is great. And one of the first ones went out this week, which was about the 5-Minute Business, a book from a marketer here in Melbourne called Mark Middow. Really good book. And on that, it was interesting. I'm not a big believer in content marketing. I am and I'm not. I believe in obviously content marketing, but I think the issue with content marketing to a certain extent is that people are using it as their lead generator, for want of a better term. But the issue with that is that people aren't searching for content necessarily. They're searching for content for information, which is great, but they're not searching for information. Oh, how do I say this? Let me say this again. People are searching for information, which is fine, but when they're searching to find a solution to a problem, they're searching for answers. They're searching for a service provider generally, not information. And, as a marketer and, when we look at the Preneur hierarchy, we're all about marketing to people who actually have a problem they're trying to solve. And content marketing I think, has confused that with a lot of people. It's given them an excuse to be busy creating content, but not busy marketing to the correct group of people. And that's my general high-level issue with content marketing. But in Mark's book, he actually talked about content marketing, and it actually gave me a different view. It actually opened my eyes up a little bit and made me think that this approach to content marketing could actually be justifiable and could actually support the Preneur hierarchy. So I've grabbed an excerpt out of his book, put it on the blog, and given a bit of commentary myself at the bottom in the comments. So if people are interested in content marketing, I'd definitely go and check out that excerpt of the 5-Minute Business over at the blog. And from there, we've also decided that, I just don't have the time to be able to read as many books as we actually get. Obviously, we get tons and tons of books and opportunities to read e-galleys and digital versions of books before they're released. And I just don't have the bandwidth to actually consume all of those things. So we're looking for 1 or 2 interns who can string a couple of words together, who can spell better than me, who are interested to join the team and, read these books and find excerpts and sections of the books that would relate to our audience, and then be in charge of posting those to the blog and giving a bit of commentary and setting some context of how it relates to the Preneur hierarchy or the 7 levers framework or positive constraints or anything like that. So, if you are interested in joining the team, we've got a whole bunch of applications. I'm going to start going through them shortly. So if you are interested, make sure you head over to the blog really soon and check out the post about the internships and the opportunities, and then you can just literally apply and you can potentially join the team and get a whole bunch of free books and get to sort of see behind the curtain of how we run the Preneur Group projects, the blog and everything else we're doing, and you get full access to all of that. You'll become literally part of the team and you can do that. So if you're interested to get free books and join the team, go over to the blog and look for that that blog post and apply. Cool. It sounds like a really good opportunity, actually, because it's certainly expanded my library, just kind of being associated with you indirectly. So someone who was brought on specifically to take on, because we do get so many books and pieces of material sent across to us to review, and we do our best, we really do. And we'd love to look at more and bring the value of more of that to the audience. So I think the internship is a great way to do that. So again, there'll be a link to that post, but you can just go to preneurmarketing.com and find these posts yourself if you're in a rush, or check out the show notes for this show, and there'll be links to all the things Pete just talked about. So on top of all that, Pete, have you managed to get any reading this week? A bit of listening, yeah. I've been had a few meetings around the town this week and trying to train for this half Ironman in a couple of weeks' time. So been out and about doing a little bit. So Art of Learning, which I think I mentioned on the last show, has been still sort of doing its rounds on my iPhone in the audiobook app. And look, I've been really enjoying this book. It was really, really cool. It was sort of a lot of surprising stuff, and definitely one of the books that I think will be added to my sort of must-read list of recommendations. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely go and check out, whether it's Amazon or over to audibletrial.com/PreneurCast, where you can go and get a free book from Audible. The writer of Art of Learning reads the book, which is really cool. I always like it when it's the author reading it. It sort of has a bit more, passion, I guess, in the words. So definitely check it out. If you haven't already subscribed to Audible, go and check it out. Subscribe to a free account and, choose The Art of Learning as the book this week.
Excellent. All right. Well, with all that, let's dive on into this week's core topic for the show, which is all about opt-ins. As we're trying to do in shows, we're trying to cover the basics of the 7 levers of business. And one of the things that I think is really overlooked in any business is the concept of opt-ins. Now, Pete and I have been talking about this recently because it kind of popped up on your radar recently, didn't it, Pete? That opt-ins are something that people are a little bit confused about.
Yeah, I think it does depend on the business a little bit. If you're in that sort of online information marketing space, I think people do get opt-ins because it's all about the squeeze page, and people almost in that sort of space over-focus on opt-ins a little bit. It's all about getting the email, getting that subscriber on your database into your Aweber account, which is fair enough, and we'll discuss that later. But yeah, we got an email from one of the world's largest bike manufacturers about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And they're looking at using the 7 levers throughout their retail channel and actually trying to help support their retailers and help them improve their businesses, because obviously the more those businesses, the retailers improve, the more bikes they sell, which obviously helps this manufacturer. And they were a little bit sort of confused about how do they account for and measure and define what an opt-in is in their retail store. And they were kind of working out, how do we do this? What do we define it as? And, that's sort of, I guess, what sparked the idea for today's show.
So in general, because as you say, opt-ins completely depend upon the business. In some businesses it's more generic than others. But in general, what is an opt-in in your definition?
Cool. I think that one way to define an opt-in is actually to define the two things around it. So the very first thing you have in any business is obviously your traffic. These are the people who come to your website, who walk into your retail store, who potentially, call up your accounting firm. And that's the traffic or the lead your business gets. Or you might even call them prospects even. And then you've got the conversions on the other side of your opt-in. So the conversions are people that actually open up their wallet and start to transact with you and agree to give you money and purchase something, whether it's products or services or something in between. So if you understand first that, okay, this is what my conversion is, you need to start working backwards, because what could be an opt-in for one business would actually be traffic for another business. Now, let me give you an example. In that, in a business where you, let's say, sell phone systems, for example, like one of our businesses, Infinity. So for us, the way we define it is that, we're primarily driven by online lead generation. That's sort of the main lead gen for new inquiries to the business. So for us, the traffic is people who come to the website, and that's, who come to various websites and all that sort of stuff. So for us, the opt-in is someone who either requests a quote for a phone system or picks up the phone and calls to speak to one of our sales team to get a quote for a phone system. So that's our definition of an opt-in, someone who's actually raised their hand and gone from a loose, interested bystander to someone who's saying, yep, I want to take the next step and go closer towards the conversion. Now, obviously, then the conversion is someone who actually opens their wallet or their business's paycheck or credit card or whatever it might be and says, all right, I'm going to buy a phone system. So that's the way you fundamentally define it, is what is the conversion for your business? But what does people have to do to sort of raise their hand and show you they are more interested than others? That's kind of the flow. Obviously, if you're an online business and you sell information products and you have a squeeze page or an opt-in form, which everyone sort of knows, somebody just stumbles across your blog, for example, or your website and is reading the information on there, they are different to the person who goes, do you know what? I'm going to actually opt in and get this free report, which sort of helps solve some sort of problem I have. It's showing them that they're more interested than just the average visitor to your website. So it's just fundamentally one way to measure the interest level of your leads, of your, and you can define them as prospects. If you're an accounting firm potentially and you're doing that sort of service, well, maybe for you, the way you want to define it is that opt-ins are people who come in for the first consultation. If you are a concreter or a tradesman, maybe for you, your conversion are obviously people who sign a contract and says, yes, you can build this pergola or this decking at the back of my home. So that's your conversion. Your opt-ins are people who get a quote. And then for that, your traffic is everybody before that. So someone who calls up and inquires for a builder, that might not be your definition of an opt-in, because your definition is waiting for someone who actually gets a quote. So the people who just call up could be your traffic number. And this is a really important takeaway, is that it doesn't really matter how you define what an opt-in is. The only thing that matters is that you A, define it, and B, you keep that consistent as you continue to measure and work your funnel, your 7-lever funnel. That's the most important thing. This is what I was telling the bike company, because from their perspective as a retailer, they had an issue. It was like, well, how do we define opt-ins? Because, in previous episodes where we've spoken about opt-ins, we've said, in this form of a retail store, like a clothing store or a footwear store, it's the opt-in for those sort of businesses are generally when someone comes in and tries on a pair of shoes, or goes into the change room to try on a dress, for example. And their issue was like, well, if we defined the opt-in as everybody who sort of engaged in conversation with our sales staff, we'd almost have a 100% opt-in rate, because everyone who kind of walks into a bike store will generally at least converse with the sales staff about something to do with bikes. And that's a very fair point. So my suggestion to him, for example, was, okay, well, is it people who go for a test ride on the bike? If that's something you can really push as part of your sales funnel, is to get people to actually go and, hop on a bike and go for a ride, that could be one way you can define your opt-in. Another way you could define an opt-in, if you wanted to, and you had the tools to measure this, is anyone who engages in a conversation more than 4 minutes. Because most retail conversations are pretty quick. How much is this? Okay, thanks, bye. So that's not really a serious prospect putting up their hand wanting to know more. Maybe you could create like a survey that is, if someone's going to buy a new bike, they fill out a survey, or just with the sales staff, like name and where you're going to be riding, how much you're going to be riding, and it sort of will help the salesperson progress the sale and work out additional items to sell, because obviously a questionnaire can do that. You can sort of really show your professionalism and understand the person's needs. But that could be your opt-in, people who are willing to sort of spend the time to help your sales staff fill out that form that gives them understanding of how they're going to be riding their bike and what they're going to be doing with the bike. So that could be your definition of an opt-in. It fundamentally doesn't matter. There is no one definition. It's just what works for you and your sales funnel that you can continually measure, because it's all about just increasing that number by 10% every time you cycle through, pardon the pun, the 7 levers.
Okay, so I mean, you made a very important point. You keep saying the important point there, but the important point is define it and measure it. And it can be different things for different companies, even within the same company, within a different context or product range or whatever, it could be different. But so that is what an opt-in is. It's that putting the hand up and volunteering to find out more about your product range, more about your products, your services, whatever, taking that next level of and demonstrating a level of interest, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the big one is, and this is what a lot of people, I think maybe it would be helpful for a lot of people to understand, is why? Why is it important? Why is it important to have opt-ins or to track opt-ins or to even be aware of opt-ins? What's wrong with traffic to conversion?
Okay, good question. Very, very good question. I think there's a number of ways we can kind of address this. Firstly, potentially it's a volume issue. Is that if you treat every single person who walks into your retail store or calls you or does some sort of interaction with your business the same, there's a volume issue here in that you're not going to be able to give the level of service to every single person that walks in. If the way you go from opt-ins to conversions, that the system you have is, really time heavy, really valuable. Like, for example, in, the telco business or something where you are selling, consultative type selling, if we went and actually had a salesperson drive out, sit with every single person who called our business, for an hour and really had a chat to them, the wastage there would be immense. We would have a lot of waste. It would just be ridiculous. So by helping people define and really getting their intent and showing that they're willing to put their hand up, that helps filter out some of these people. It helps you when you go to the conversion engine and you are sort of maybe going out and doing a quote to people, you're sitting down with them face to face, whatever it might be. You've got more predefined, predisposed, pre-qualified people to speak with, which not only obviously makes conversions easier, but it makes it cheaper and quicker as well, because you have people sort of always self-select out. So that's one of the reasons you want to have those opt-ins in there, is so you can, clearly define who's worth your time, who is it worth spending time with, because that way you can really focus in on those people and invest more of your time, energy, and effort to get those people to convert, as opposed to the tire kickers. That's probably a term that a lot of people know as well, is that on a car, people just come in and kick some tires and waste some time. They're not worth your energy. They're not worth following up 5 times. They're not worth sending little things to sort of help them and move them forward in the buying cycle. You really want to help and define and figure out where people are in that buying cycle, and opt-ins and defining an opt-ins correctly can help you do that.
I definitely take that on board, because from my own personal experience, I have found that enforcing an opt-in stage does give you that sense of self-selection, as you called it. This idea that people are volunteering for more information, they want to find out more. Pre-qualifying themselves was another term you used there. It can depend on the business and the product range and services and things like that as to how important it is. But there's definitely a value, not just in that initial stage. Some of the examples that I have for that are things like, in my new consulting role, we make sure that we have a meeting with people. Mm-hmm. So that is the opt-in, is like a pre-sales meeting where we go and talk to them, and we, as previously mentioned, I've talked about the spin selling approach, and it's our opportunity not just to qualify the client, but to find out more about the client, to find out if there's more we can offer them, rather than what they initially thought they wanted. If I just had a list of services on my website, they went to the website, they ticked a box, and we delivered, as it were, I'm probably missing a sale. In a lot of cases, so for me, having the opt-in, having that step in between traffic to conversion allows me, and so we're back into the 7 levers again, really, further down the list of 7 levers into, number of items per transaction, for example. And also onwards from there, if they've opted into the traditional, your opening point was this traditional idea of this mailing list for online companies, but any company can run a mailing list, can't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and if someone's on your mailing list, then as part of your opt-in process, it's an opportunity to communicate to them about further offers, which extends the number of transactions that they make with you, more of the 7 levers.
I think something that you kind of touched on there that sort of sparked something that I think is important, that causes a lot of confusion for people, is actually what's the difference between an opt-in and a conversion. Because you mentioned that your opt-ins are meetings, and I think in a certain way people might confuse that, because technically I would argue that the meeting itself, actually physically sitting down face to face with the person, is actually the conversion engine. It's the thing that actually makes the conversion. So when you're actually working on conversions, that is when you look at, okay, how do I structure the meeting? How do I structure my pitch? How do I get them to actually convert? Because the way I look at this, and I'm hopefully going to describe this well without any diagrams, is that the conversion happens at the end of the conversion engine. The opt-in happens at the end of the opt-in engine. Now, the opt-in engine might be your squeeze page itself, if you're an information marketer online. So when you're working on opt-ins, you're working on your squeeze page to increase the number of opt-ins you actually get as a result. So when you say, okay, my opt-ins are my my meetings, well, that's the result you want of your opt-in, someone to agree to a meeting. But the actual
I should clarify. That's exactly what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Is that the outcome, the thing is to, like you said, requesting a quote is an opt-in. For me, it's agreeing to a meeting.
Yes, and then the actual meeting itself is the conversion engine, which we'll obviously talk about in another episode. But
it starts the process of conversion.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the thing that I think a lot of people get confused at as well, is they sort of get that confusion between the two. So when you're talking about working on your opt-ins, all you're trying to do is get more people to engage in your conversion engine. Now, your conversion engine could be a long-form sales letter on a web page. It could be a 3-part email sequence that sells them a service. It could be a meeting. It could be a phone call. It could be the ability to hand the person to go out to the person's home and discuss with them the goal they want and give them the quote. So the opt-in for this builder is not actually the quote itself, it's the ability to go out and quote. It's how many people who inquire agree with having you come out and talk to them and work out a quote. Then the conversion engine in that scenario is obviously, here's the quote and here's all the reasons you need to actually buy from me and pay me this money. So that the quoting itself is not the opt-in. The opt-in is actually getting the ability to go out there and see that person.
That's a really good point and very well clarified, actually. I mean, I remember many, many years ago, I don't know if they still do it now, but in the UK, there's quite a famous high-end vacuum cleaner manufacturer, and they literally do home demonstrations. That is the thing that you opt into. You agree to have one of their representatives come to your home to demonstrate. And from the point up to the point where you agree, that's the opt-in. After you've agreed, that begins the conversion, because this demonstration is structured to convert you and to get you to buy the vacuum cleaner.
So
just another example of that.
In that scenario, the conversion doesn't start until you walk in the door. So not to kind of get overly detailed with this for a podcast, but if you have people who agree to in-house demonstration, for example, if we use this vacuum manufacturer here, you might have some people agree to it, but then people who cancel the demonstration before you actually walk in the door. That is still an opt-in issue. Getting people to stick with, attending your webinar, for example, if you're an online business person. So getting people to, opt into your webinar and actually then turn up to the webinar, those two issues are still part of the opt-in lever. The conversion lever doesn't actually start until people attend the webinar and watch your sales pitch. So if you're getting people to opt into a webinar as part of your opt-in sequence, then you have to make sure you get that person to turn up. And there's a whole bunch of strategies obviously out there to encourage people from the technical opt-in of their email address or registration for the webinar to the turning up on the webinar. Those issues there are still part of your opt-in lever. So in certain circumstances, and not to kind of get too granular, that a particular lever might have two elements to it. The actual registration and the attendance, the actual agreeing to letting you walk in the door and not cancelling beforehand. Like that's all part of that opt-in lever that you need to work through.
But I know you say you don't want to get too granular, but I do think it is important, because one of the most important parts of the 7 levers is measurement. It's measuring each part, knowing what you're measuring, and then actively measuring it and reviewing the measurements. And so being able to clearly define where one thing starts and ends is really important. And it is down to you and it is down to your business. But it is still very, very important. And I do think, that you gave some good examples there without getting too granular. And I think it was good to point it out. Whatever goes into getting them to take the step across the line, right up to that line, and stepping over it is still part of that lever. So in opt-ins, if they agree. And we'll use webinar, although it's completely not focused on online business or online tactics at all, but we'll use a webinar sign up. Somebody signs up and fills in their email address or whatever and agrees to turn up to a webinar at a certain date and time. But if they don't turn up, then there is something, in inverted commas, wrong with the opt-in process. Once they turn up to the webinar, then they are then in the conversion stage, because they're then going to see that webinar, which is oriented to them purchasing something or whatever. Same with the home demonstration of the vacuum cleaner. It's a completely different industry, completely different thing, but exactly the same in that they agree to the home demonstration and then they cancel it. They haven't gone into the conversion phase because they haven't seen the demonstration.
Absolutely correct.
And so something went wrong then. Anything. It could be anything. There's no definition. Don't need to go into the granularity of that. It's just that they haven't. If you're looking at it in terms of things like what goes into it, well, maybe it's copywriting. Maybe you're writing a description of what will happen in the demonstration, and maybe that's not compelling enough for them to even agree.
Mm-hmm. Or
there's some doubt in their mind, and just before the appointment, they go, I'm not convinced enough, I'm going to cancel it.
Yeah.
So that, it's just a little bit more concrete example of what it could be in the opt-in process that means that they didn't get through there.
That's where stick strategies, getting people to stick to the commitment they've made, is important in a lot of different levels. Whether it's the opt-in level, getting to stick with, at least attending or being involved with the conversion scenario. And then obviously after someone purchases from you, getting them to stick and not refund. That is technically part of the conversion engine. Now, obviously, I won't want to sort of jump too far ahead, but this is the sort of stuff is that when you're looking at conversions, getting people, there's conversion is not just about that first meeting. Conversions also include two other elements. One is people who agree to attend the meeting, whether it's the vacuum demonstration or read your sales letter, but don't purchase then and there. The continual marketing to that person who's at least engaged and put their hand up and said, look, I'm interested in this topic. I'm willing to invest a bit of time with you coming in and pitching me your vacuum cleaner. Now, just because I didn't buy then in that meeting doesn't mean you stop trying to convert me. Just because someone opts into your email list and then go and reads the sales letter, which is the next step, which is the conversion engine in that scenario. They've read the sales letter. Just because I don't buy just then doesn't mean you stop trying to convert that person. That's when you do your remarketing and your follow-up sequences. If someone goes and allows you to come and quote on a pergola or some decking in their home, if they don't sign the quote and say yes right then, doesn't mean you stop trying to convert them. You follow them up, you call them, you send them other information, you send them before and after photos. There's a whole bunch of sequences that you can do to ensure that person converts. So there are other elements that make up that whole conversion engine, as well as stick. So, someone buys from you, you want to make sure they don't cancel and refund. That is technically part of your conversion engine to actually ensure that person stays converted. So this is where you look at things like opt-ins. There are a few elements around the opt-in as well, rather than just the person, raising their hand. There are other things that go around that's very important too.
Yeah. So just to kind of bring back to those first 2 points then. So the first point is, what is an opt-in? It is that primarily it is somebody putting their hand up and saying, I'd like to know more in some way. Tell me more about you, tell me more about your product, tell me more about your services, tell me more about something, engage me further in the sales process. That is an opt-in in its simplest forms. As you say, there are other pieces around it. But in its simplest form, if you can define that part of your sales process, what that would look like to you, that's your opt-in. And then there's what the other question I asked, which is why bother? Why is it important? And I think you just gave another example there again. Why it's important. You can make a sale without an opt-in. Many businesses make many sales without opt-ins, but there are so many reasons why opt-ins are important, starting with the quality of client that you can get, the quality of service that you can give to a client if they indicate their interest and they self-select. Then there's all the ongoing benefits like, as you say, they opt in, but they don't convert. Well, if you know that they opted in, you know that they showed an interest, they didn't convert, you can go back to them and continue the conversion process with more backup information or whatever, which is the example you just gave. And then even if they go through the opt-in and they do convert, there's still the opportunity further down the line to go back to them again because you know who they are and they opted in, with the further 7 levers to add to the conversion process, or to just inform them more about your services or anything else they may be interested in.
I think also something as well that ties into all this is actually the language you use. Talking to the people in the different levers are different. The things you need to say to someone before they've opted in is very, very different to the words and language and things you say to somebody who's already opted in, now trying to get them to open their wallet or their purse. So the communication that you send, whether it's, if someone, let's use an online business example again, someone comes to your website and they don't opt in, they don't actually opt in to whatever it is you've got, whether it's adding products to a cart. Let's use e-commerce as an example. We haven't used that on today's show yet. Let's say, for example, someone comes to your website and they look at your e-commerce products but don't actually add anything to the shopping cart. Now, obviously, you can do remarketing to those people. You can now cookie them and show banner ads around the web that when they browse other websites, your ad about your products and services appear. So the thing that you would advertise on those banners could or should and would be very, very different to the thing you would put on a banner to people who have added something to a cart. So someone's added something to your cart in your e-commerce store, but not actually checked out. Well, obviously, what you can then do is, if you are, really granular with your remarketing, you can then run ads for that specific product back to that person, saying that this product is now there's a sale on this specific product. So when they come back, they get a 5% discount on that particular item. So that is a very specific message you have to someone to convert that person who added something to their cart to their checkout and obviously pay. Whereas if someone has just browsed the site and you don't know exactly what specific product they're after, it's a very different message and very different language you would use. And that's one very granular example of how you would do different things and different approaches and different language to opt-ins versus non-opt-ins. But this happens in every other business as well. Like the language you would use to some people is very, very different to others depending on where they are in their buying cycle. And getting people to opt in and put their hand up can show you where they are in that buying cycle, how close they are to actually wanting to really solve the problem they have.
Yeah, I mean that as you say, is a very granular example with very, very specific applications. But it's just another way and just another example of when I was saying about the spin selling approach. By getting the opportunity to know somebody is interested and going and talking to them, then your sales messages can go from generic to specific. Whatever the platform is, however you do it, that's really what we're talking about here. So, okay, so we know what an opt-in is, and hopefully people have got an idea in their own businesses what an opt-in might be in their own sales funnels, sales processes, and more importantly, why it's important to them and important to their business, the quality of clients, business revenue, which is what we're all after here with the 7 levers. So, can we? Do you reckon rattle off a few more? Because I think we've given quite a few examples of what an opt-in might be, but a few more opt-in ideas for different kinds of businesses before we close up for the show?
Yeah, sure. Car yard, someone who goes for a test drive, that's your opt-in. For retail stores, as I said, someone who actually tries on a dress or tries on a pair of shoes. For an e-com site, someone who adds something to their checkout and their shopping cart. For an info person, it's someone who obviously gives you their email address and opts into the free report or whatever it might be. For obviously a restaurant, it's someone who calls and makes a booking. This is the thing. As an example, to give an example that doesn't really apply to, restaurants are an interesting one to a certain extent because generally, you just walk into the restaurant. So how do you encourage opt-ins in a restaurant when people just sort of walk past and turn up? You don't sort of have that general opt-in. Now, there are ways to get creative where if you have a website where people are going to check the menu before they come to your restaurant, if you can get them to put their email address in and offer them a half-price bottle of wine, that at least now gets you a list of people who obviously are in your vicinity who go to restaurants. I know Rory Fatt, who's kind of the big restaurant marketer. He has done a lot of research, and generally most people have 3 restaurants they go to over and over again. As a restaurateur, you don't really think about that. You think, oh yeah, you have some regulars, but the majority of your clientele will be regulars. They'll one person has 3 restaurants they'll go to over and over again. I know I do. There's a French restaurant we go to all the time. There's a place down the road here that we go to all the time. So there's fundamentally 2 restaurants that Fleur and I go to all the time. We occasionally visit other ones, but they're the 2 we go to. So if they had my email address and let me know about specials and let me know about special deals, I would probably go there even more so than I do right now, because rather than saying, oh, do we try somewhere new tonight or we just go somewhere we get a free bottle of wine, I know where I would choose. So that's how a restaurant can have an opt-in. This is where you have to start thinking creatively as well in some industries where traditionally you can't find an opt-in, and that's fine. But there's ways you can start manufacturing an opt-in to help grow a certain funnel or certain part of your funnel too.
Yeah, I think there's a really good example there where you showed that something that somebody wouldn't necessarily think had an opt-in has one. I think everything has or could have an opt-in, even if, when in doubt, it is sign up to our newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is this is a big thing. I think a lot of people know this, but a lot of people don't. So asking someone to sign up to your newsletter is the worst kind of opt-in. If the actual call to action, the actual offer you make for someone to opt in, because technically when you are engaging in an opt-in, you are making an offer to someone in exchange for value. So, if you are getting someone's email address, that is value to them. You have to exchange something of value in return. And saying, give me your email address and I'll just send you more information to your inbox is a very poor, very, very poor offer. People have too much in their inbox. So why would you want to give somebody more of what they've got? If you have an abundance of water, why would I say, give me something, give me $2, I'll give you some more water. Like, I don't need more water, I've got too much of it. So simply saying, give me your email address and join our newsletter is that sort of example. It's just like, why do I need more of a random newsletter crap? My inbox is overflowing. Whereas if you say, give me your email address and I will give you one quick tip to help you XYZ, that is value. If you know what your opt-ins are wanting, what the next step someone should take to get closer to a sale, that's really, really good. If you have a person coming to your footwear store and you say to them, look, let me look at your feet and I'll give you the advice of what shoes you should buy. That's value for that person's time. So whether they decide to buy from you in your conversion engine or not, someone going through and having a foot assessment, they can now take that information anywhere to buy a shoe, whether it's online or in your store. So that's a good return for an opt-in in terms of value. That's the kind of thing you want to start thinking about. What am I doing? So saying, and I know you didn't mean this, Dom, because I know you understand this, but if you are out there on your website right now, you are making a very, very basic offer of join our newsletter in exchange for your email address, that is a piss poor attempt at doing an opt-in. Yes, the opt-in is there. You've technically got an opt-in opportunity, but that offer itself is very, very poor.
I'm so pleased that you picked that up and went with that, because it saved me doing it. That's exactly where I was going to go next with that, because it's absolutely the most important point. Is that if you find yourself in a situation, it's no longer good enough. I think you've made the point more solidly than I think I could have, really. Just saying sign up for our newsletter. I mean, I've seen people do this. When we do our website reviews, we see it all the time. Sign up for our newsletter. Why?
What's the benefit? How does that move your prospect closer to the solution they're after? And obviously, when you convert people, you are offering solutions. That's all you do as a business. You offer solutions to problems. So your opt-in has to help move that person closer to a solution.
Yep. I mean, even when we are booking our meetings, with the consulting business, we explain what is going to happen in that meeting, why they should spend their time listening to us. We're not arrogant enough, and you as a business owner shouldn't be arrogant enough to expect that people will just do something. So people won't just have a meeting with me, much as I'd like to believe that they would, but no, they won't. There has to be value in the meeting. And the more that you can explain what that value is going to be, rather than, well, I'm just going to come and sell you something, which is what most people expect it's going to be, then the more likely you are to get that opt-in. And that is it. It's about the message. We could go, again, far more granular about this, but the generic message is, if you want somebody to opt in, whatever that opt-in is, they need to understand the value. If they're not opting in, that, I would say, is where you need to be looking. Do they understand the value they are going to get?
Yeah. Everything's a value exchange. That's the big thing.
Yeah. And in this day and age, whether it's time online or time on the high street, everybody thinks that their time is shorter and more valuable.
Absolutely.
So you've got to make that point. Cool. Mate, I think we've really covered that quite well for what is a topic that I think people don't have a good grasp of. I think you've given some good examples there. And the justification as to why, which I think, personally is one of those things that's missing from a lot of people's understanding. And some great examples. I love the restaurant one where you pulled out, something, because a lot of people think, as you say, if they've heard about anything about online business, they think an opt-in is sign up for my newsletter. And I think we've kind of duffed that one up as well. So
awesome. Very, very cool.
Cool. All right, folks. So if you want to give us some feedback on these 7 levers points or whatever, or any other part of the show or any other show, you can always visit PreneurMarketing.com, where you will also find the show notes for every show with all the links, the transcripts, downloadable versions of the show. Listen to it wherever you like. You can leave a comment below the post for every show. And of course, well, I say of course, but you may not know, but the shows are available on iTunes, and you can leave us a comment on the iTunes store as well.
And I think with most people, they're listening to the show on, the app on their iPhone, or might be the Stitcher app, or whatever app you are listening to the show. And if you are doing it that way, you can really quickly inside the app right now, while we're talking, leave us a comment, leave us a review, and we would really appreciate you doing that, because obviously, we give up an hour and more every week to sort of, record and edit these shows up at no charge to you guys. And, the way you can offer value back to us is just by saying thanks in the form of a review or a comment. So if you have listened to more than 2 episodes and you've got some value out of it, can you please just give us 2 minutes of your time in return with a quick review? It would mean the world to us, and it would be really appreciated as a great value exchange.
And if you find it valuable, then hopefully someone else would. And by giving us that positive feedback, then you're helping other people find us and get this great information as well. So we would really appreciate that, and hopefully so will other potential listeners.
Absolutely.
Pete, I think we should wrap it up there. It's usual time limit on the show. What's coming up on the next show?
It's going to be a fun conversation. It's a conversation with Dave Jennings, who's a good buddy of mine who was originally an arch enemy. We started off as arch enemies, and now we are best friends. He, his business is run out of our office building and all that sort of stuff. So it's a conversation about how we started off, being at loggerheads with each other, and how we ended up becoming best friends. And obviously it's all around business and marketing. So it's going to be it's a very interesting conversation, and I think people will get a lot out of it.
Super. I'm really looking forward to that, actually, because David J is one seriously sharp guy. So that's probably going to be interesting. And also I'm interested to hear a little bit about this arch enemy thing as well.
Very cool. Well, boys and girls, we will see you in the iTunes comments, and we will also hear and speak to you next week.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@preneurgroup.com.